Hey guys, Mike the Cop. Last week in Houston, 4 police officers were shot and another injured when they were serving a warrant on a house suspected of dealing narcotics. This video is not about the details of that incident per se, but about the response that came from that incident from both the police union president, Joe Grimaldi, and police chief Art Acevedo. In the wake of the incident, here is what the union president in Houston had to say.
But now I want to speak on behalf of the 5,200 brave men and women of the Houston Police Department and the other 800,000 police officers that are working these streets every single day, putting their lives on the line. We are sick and tired of having targets on our back. We are sick and tired of having dirtbags trying to take our lives when all we're trying to do is protect this community and protect our families. Enough is enough. And if you're the ones that are out there spreading the rhetoric that police officers are the enemy, well, just know we've all got your number now. We're going to be keeping track of all of y'all, and we're going to make sure that we hold you accountable every time you stir the pot on our police officers. We've had enough, folks. We're out there doing our jobs every day, putting our lives on the line for our families. Enough is enough. Now, please, keep these officers in your prayers.
Now, of course, he's using strong language. I mean, this is literally in the heat of the moment, his reaction to seeing this incident take place, to seeing people he cares about shot in the course of doing their work, trying to keep a community safe. And he's saying, who is he addressing? Dirtbags who would try to take their lives if for no other reason than the fact that that is what they are trying to do in the course of serving their community, being police officers. Now, some activist group took this personally and decided that he's threatening them, and they began to put this political pressure on the city of Houston, on the police department itself, and condemning his statement as though it was directed at them, even though the people that were involved in the shooting had nothing to do with any of the activist group. They inserted themselves into the situation. If you go on to Black Lives Matter Houston, I saw these comments. The death of his or their job is sufficient. A mortal death is too sweet and merciful. Another person said, pig roast anyone. See, it's that kind of rhetoric that he's talking about. We're not talking about true dialogue, true community activism in which there are actions being engaged in that better the community. We're talking about furthering the rhetoric of an anti-police, pro-violent position in such a way that literally people are seeking the opportunities to get back at police and give them, quote, a dose of their own medicine, as some people would perceive it to be. Activist Ashton Woods fired back, according to Black Lives Matter Houston. We have a freedom of speech, he told the Chronicle. We don't need you blaming us for what happened yesterday. Okay, you just heard the same comments from Grimaldi that I did, and they were not blamed for it. I don't know where they get this other than wanting to assert themselves into the situation and do exactly what Grimaldi is talking about, which is to have faux outrage and not objective information. So we'll get to that in a little bit. Some of these activist groups that were putting pressure on the chief spurred him to have his own press conference in which he said these things.
Quite frankly, I think that probably some of the consternation might be less to do with the actions of our narcotics division and more to do with some of the comments that were somewhat over the top by Joe Grimaldi. Because we've had, we used to average 45 officer-involved shootings or more in this city, and we're down to about 15 a year, and you know it because you've lived it. So we're doing all the right things in this city, in this department, and including with our relational policing and our partnership with the community. But I'm not sure, because I've been here now for 2 years, and this is the first time that we have this brouhaha, and quite frankly, I think a big part of it is because Joe Grimaldi's emotions got the best of him and just went off a little bit over the top over there, not a lot over the top if you ask me.
It would appear to me that the chief has somewhere along the line misplaced his spine. Why in the world would it be considered over the top for a police officer to be impassioned and say that there are dirtbags out there that are stirring up a violent culture against the police and that they've had enough and that they're going to start holding them accountable for that kind of action. Why would that ever, in any world full of common sense and principle, be over the top? Unless, of course, now you need to be a chameleon and change your skin a little bit so that you're out of danger and somebody can, look past you and blame somebody else. And people, Grimaldi wasn't criticizing any particular activist group, or he didn't even use the words, "you activist groups." He was very specific. In his own words, he said, "There is nothing over the top about vocalizing what we as law enforcement officers are feeling every day. I will continue to hold those accountable that spew hateful, inflammatory, anti-police rhetoric. I'm not talking about those activists who want genuine interaction with our officers. I am talking about those that call for our deaths." And he adds, "It was sad being thrown under the bus by the police chief. I agree, it is sad. And it is sad that the chief is bending to political pressure and agreeing, going along to pacify activists who inserted themselves into the situation without being named or called out. Unless, of course, the shoe fits. So if there is that kind of rhetoric on your page, well, then maybe it does fit you, and maybe those people should be held accountable."
But that's none of my business.
The chief is defending the department, but Grimaldi was not criticizing the department at all. He wasn't saying that the department hasn't done good things. He wasn't saying that the department doesn't have a good relationship with activists. So he seems to be defending a problem that doesn't exist. Grimaldi is saying that pro-violent, anti-police rhetoric in this cultural phenomena that exists is a problem and needs to be called out. And the chief can't seem to bring himself to say the same thing. He goes on.
Which brings me to this. Joe Grimaldi doesn't run the Houston Police Department. I do. I'm the police chief, and I'm responsible for everything that goes on in the department. But having said that, I wanted this executive team up here because we have to remember that one incident, one person does not represent 5,200 sworn members in terms of what we're talking about. And I think, quite frankly, if Joe Grimaldi had to do a retake and maybe on some of the things that he said that night, or I don't know what he said since, but right now, it's important for people to know I lead the department. Let me finish. This is my press conference, and we'll talk later.
So, Chief, one person doesn't represent the 5,200 sworn members unless that one person is just you. This is your press conference. This is your thing. You are the chief in it, and it stops with you. So only you can represent the department. I guess I get it in an official capacity. The buck does stop with the chief in that sense. But do you not understand that those law enforcement officers in the Houston Police Union, in fact, did elect Joe Grimaldi to speak for them as the president of the union? He does, in some sense, represent them and their thoughts. So that you guys have an understanding of what's going on here, you've got patrol and you have command. Those are generally separate unions. Sometimes they're together, but they're unionized so that they have a voice as people who are out there doing the work, and so that they're not abused by their employers, aka city administrators. But when it comes to police admin, they are often contracted or at-will employees designed to work directly for the administration of a city, and therefore they tend to be much more connected to the political side of things than the policing side of things. Some chiefs handle that better than others. Clearly, the chief seems to want to put words in Grimaldi's mouth and say that, if Joe could redo it, he'd probably handle it differently. No, he's been approached since then. Here's what he had to say.
It could be the activists that decide they want to stir up every single use of force incident, even though it is overwhelmingly justified in every single case, and create their own faux outrage however they choose to. But the fact of the matter is, I said, we're going to hold y'all accountable.
According to Grimaldi, by using social media to counter what he says are false narratives about police.
Back to the chief.
So I would urge people to do two things. Number one, we should not paint activists with broad brushes. And our department should not be painted with a broad brush because of one guy's comments or whatever comments he's made since. Because ultimately, that's one person, one opinion. Sometimes people don't know what the HPOU is and what the HPD is, and sometimes They put them two together. Their labor, we are the police department. And the police...
Oh, okay. Their labor. Sir, I genuinely hope that this is a momentary lapse in what would otherwise be good judgment on your part, and that you will look back on this and be able to correct it, and then stand in front of the men and women who serve under you and demonstrate a resolve of strength of character. Because quite frankly, it would seem that you think effective leadership comes from the position you hold and not the ability to earn the respect of the people who serve under you. You want to influence them well, you want to lead well, you want to continue to have success as a police department in your community. Well, you're gonna have to actually pick that spine back up and reinsert it, because bending and bowing to the political pressures and the political correctness movement around you is not going to accomplish that. Regardless of how decorated, how many stars or stripes you have on your uniform in the position that you were appointed to, that doesn't mean that you've earned the respect of the laborers. They're not the police department. That's labor. Doesn't mean that you've earned their respect. And I sincerely hope that as you progress in your career as the police chief of the Houston Police Department, that you would come to a point to where you don't view your police officers as simple labor that create an emotional baggage for you to tote around during times of political pressure, but that you would actually stand with them in calling out the negative things in culture that are against law and order and justice. All right, that's it for me on this one, guys. If you need me, I'll be here in my office not getting hired by the Houston Police Department. Good day.